All right, what's up, guys? Corey here with the Long Island Lacrosse Journal. Really pleasure, to have Brandon Childs, head men's lacrosse coach at York, back involved. I know we got a chance to come visit you, Coach Childs, and get a beautiful tour of the campus and the school during that blizzard, which is pretty wild. We interviewed a couple years back, and it's good to catch up again. How are you guys holding up over there?
Yeah, doing well. I got 4 children keeping me busy right now, so active, trying to keep them active and keep them going.
Cool, man. So we'll try to be brief, considering I can only imagine what it's like to have 4 kids and try to get
You
work
take your time. You take your time.
So we were talking a little bit earlier off air just about that piece that you put together for Inside Lacrosse, which was beautifully written. It was really well done. It was also something I think a lot of coaches probably needed to hear a little bit, just because people just don't know how to kind of get through what's going on right now, because it's never really happened before. And in your piece, which I think was titled "How a Coach Would Handle This," I'm just kind of curious, like where did you come about, like the title for that, and why did you kind of write that in the first place?
Yeah, well, I mean, the title actually was created by Matt Kinnear from Inside Lacrosse. I just wrote the piece and sent it to him, and he kind of titled it so that it would, work on the website, I guess you could say. But it all started. Matt from Inside Lacrosse sent me a text message just asking, what my thoughts were on kind of the stoppage and the cancellation of the season, and I told him that I'd probably put down a whole lot of thoughts and just as a coping mechanism, and so ended up writing this piece and sent it over to Matt, and he asked if they could put it up on Inside Lacrosse. And so, but I guess where it all started was we were the week that all this went down, we were preparing for the Mustang Classic down at Stevenson. So we were preparing for 2 opponents on one weekend. We were supposed to play Ohio Wesleyan on Friday, and then we were supposed to play RIT on Saturday. So a really busy week, and trying to put together 2 scouting reports, 2 film sessions, practice planning. All the while, all these distractions are going on, and the uncertainty. And I don't think anybody will ever forget how fast everything was changing. You would go to a meeting or a film session, or close your door and turn off everything so you could concentrate for a half hour, and then you come back and there was a new cancellation or a new, something else was going on. And so it was so what ultimately ended up happening was Thursday, I think it was March the 12th, we found out we weren't going to be able to go to Stevenson, and quite frankly started scrambling to figure out a way if we could play a game that night, like one last game. And so our everything kind of shifted and changed. So Thursday was the busiest day that I've had as a college lacrosse coach. Well, then Friday morning, once everything had pretty much shut down, so our season was over at that point. The Mustang Classic had been canceled at that point. It was pretty clear that we weren't going to be able to get one last game at that point. So then Friday morning, I had nothing but time on my hands. All my students were still in class. And so when Matt sent me that text, I said, all right, well, I'll spend my morning writing. That morning of Thursday, the 12th, when everything was going down, I definitely drove to work thinking about what my coach would do in these circumstances. And that question, I think every one of us coaches asks a lot when we think when we have a difficult situation coming up, whether it's you're coming off of a loss or there's an off the field issue or a leadership thing. Oftentimes the first question we ask is what would our coach do? And that kind of started the gist of the message that was going out there, was how all of us younger coaches ultimately relied a lot on the mentors that have been passed down from generation to generation in our great game.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think, anytime you reflect back on some of the mentors that have helped you through it, how, I guess, at what point did you kind of feel as though like you've taken all these great things from the mentors and coaches that have kind of like helped you along the way and said, okay, I'm gonna drive something for my own in this direction. And then also, besides that and building what you've kind of created at York, do you kind of still connect with those guys and lean on them when needed? Or is it kind of something that like, okay, thanks, I appreciate it. Now I'm kind of moving on. I'm gonna kind of shape my own path now, take my own path, so to speak.
Yeah. I mean, I guess for the first part of your question, you definitely, as a coach, the best thing you can do, at least in my opinion, the best thing you can do is be you and as authentically you as possible. And so taking a lot from mentors that I've had, is really, really important. But you can't be someone that you're not. And so once you kind of have your base from your mentors and this, like, it's almost like a file cabinet of every situation that had happened, you can go back to it, but then you kind of have to shift and adapt it so that it's you and that the message is you. And that authenticity creates a lot of trust with your players. And so you got to be you, but it doesn't hurt to have mentors that did things some ways that you would do them, and then did some things in ways which maybe you wouldn't have done it that way, to pull from. And then for the second part of your question, in terms of, do I still communicate with them? I personally am one that loves to reach out and ask questions. And so I call other coaches a lot and seek counsel a lot. I think that's part of my personality. Some other people, probably, put their head down and grind through it on their own. But I like asking questions. I like seeking some counsel and some feedback from my mentors. And so I'm regularly calling other coaches to get input.
In your letter on Inside Lacrosse, you kind of mentioned like a dialogue that you had with someone that you'd met, and it's something that you felt as though a lot of college coaches kind of relate to. And in it, you kind of talked about how, like, you have the greatest job in the world. I'm just kind of curious what you meant by that, and why you kind of think that personally.
Yeah, well, I mean, every coach, probably every sport, has kind of been in that situation where you're at some gathering, someone asks what you do for a living, and you tell them you're a coach, and they immediately think that must be a hobby, and then I do something else. And so that was kind of the start of that point. But I do always try to tell people that I have the greatest job. And I guess my rationale behind that is, I think we have a big opportunity when we're coaching these kids. I mean, we have them between the ages of 18 and 22 years old. And it's just quite the idea of higher education is, parents drop them off on your campus and then leave. And then, not as literal, but 4 years later, they come and pick them up, and then they're in the real world. And so what an opportunity to really, like, shape and have an impact on young men. And then when you're doing it as a coach with a sport that they love, you just have their attention. There's no other profession, like educators in certain majors and things make connections with their students. But the competition and playing the sport they love and game planning and all of that goes hand in hand. You just really have an 18-year-old's, like, undivided attention for 4 years, which just gives you such an opportunity to have a positive impact on them. And to me, that's the fun of it all.
Yeah.
And so that's why I say, I have the best job in the world.
Yeah, I think what I thought was really interesting too that you mentioned is, like, not just the preparation and the preparedness of how you guys approach, like, competitions, but just kind of like what you do in terms of preparing and developing players kind of like off the field. Why do you kind of feel as though that's just like part of, like, the job description? And how do you kind of approach that day to day to make sure that it's an experience that kids are learning, like, on and off the field consistently?
Yeah, I mean, I think, and I hadn't always been this way. I mean, after the 2017 season, which, was a pretty successful season for us on the field, but it felt like it lacked something. There was just something missing. And I think it was because I spent the majority of my time on how we were going to play picks or what we were going to run on man up. And it's just very X's and O's oriented. And I was a lacrosse coach who was trying to master the X's and O's, and made a pretty fundamental shift going to 2018, where it was a lot of just kind of reaching these guys on a different level. And it started with really identifying what our culture needed to be about. And then that culture of what we're about kind of creates the roadmap for every scenario that comes our way. So whether it be on the field or off the field, we just fall back on, our 3 core principles and how it applies to each situation, whether it be I'm struggling in a class, I'm struggling in a personal relationship, my mom is at home and sick and I'm here. Just a lot of things that happen throughout the course of the year that, again, as an outsider, when you tell somebody you're just a lacrosse coach, they don't understand that, like, you have players that lose loved ones when they're 2,000 miles from home, or you have players that get diagnosed with some tragic diseases when they're 2,000 miles from home. I mean, you have things that happen in your office with these guys. And what we discovered kind of in 2018 is that our culture and our core beliefs can always be our fallback of where we start when we hit some adversity.
Mm-hmm.
And that helped quite a bit. And I think that's the things that our guys will be applying to their lives, down the road when things such as what we're going through now hit them.
Would you say that created like more meaning, like in 2018, 19? Would you feel as though like you guys are striving towards like a more meaningful experience because of that approach?
Yeah, absolutely. This will sound a little weird. I don't know how else to explain the point, but typically when the season ends and you lose more often than not, you lose your last game, and your seniors are crying and your underclassmen are crying because they're crying, and then the coach, it's just so emotional. And the 2018 season ended in the national quarterfinals. We were in the Elite Eight and we lost, and it ended. And I'm a big crier, so it was the first time where I didn't. And I don't like to use the word content too much, but that's the only way to describe it. Is like at the end of the 2018 season, no matter whether we had won or lost that game, we had done what we had set out to do back in July of that year,
Mm-hmm.
regardless of the outcome of any wins or losses. Like we'd reached our potential as a team on the field,
Mm-hmm.
and we accomplished it in such a our team was so aligned in the right way.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what I always remember about that season was kind of like, again, it sounds weird, but the alignment of our team. We were all pulling in the same direction, quite literally.
So just kind of like to fast forward a little bit to present day with the 2020 season, you guys are moving, in a good direction, or in your opinion, in a specific direction towards your goals. Things get cut short abruptly, and like you said, everything happened really quickly within a day. Like the season gets canceled essentially. For you, like, I guess in your opinion, like, why do you feel as though in times like that, like players need a kind of coach to help them through it? Like, why do you think that's something that it's a coach's responsibility to say, okay, like this is a time when I need to step up for my guys and help them through it in whatever way that you do?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think in times of adversity or like uncharted waters, like anybody's going to need somebody to pull them through it. And I just think for these guys, these 18-year-olds, like, I mean, they're going to look at their coach. And so you need to be prepared in those moments to do whatever they need. That's the other thing that's unique about this is when you're coaching 45 guys, like they're all different. They're all uniquely made. And so some of them need to talk, like if it were me and I was 18, I'd need to talk to my coach and I'd need to like cry it out and ask questions. And then, there's guys that could really internalize it and kind of keep to themselves. And so you need to figure out as a coach how to relate and manage it with those guys as well. And so yeah, I mean, we were in this instance, we did exactly what we said. I mean, this is not a Brandon Child's original thought, but Tim and Brian Kite, who are like the culture coaches that are kind of popular right now in college athletics, talk about this event plus response equals opportunity or outcomes.
Mm-hmm.
And we talk about that a lot with our team. Like a failed clear is an event, and how we respond to that failed clear may determine the outcome of this game. Your alarm clock goes off in the morning. That's an event. How you respond, do you hit snooze or do you get up and go to that class? How you respond to that alarm clock determines the outcome of that class. So we talk about that a lot in very little ways, like an alarm clock going off, and in very big ways, like in this instance. And so in this team meeting, we had talked about, I mean, I have a sweatshirt that just says E plus R equals O, and I wear it, almost every practice. It's just this visual reminder that there's going to be some events that we don't like, and we can choose how we respond.
Mm-hmm.
So with that being said, with this meeting, it was like, all right, well, I'm just going to fall back on what we've been talking about in terms of shot selection, in terms of we give up a goal and then we lose the next face off. We give up a goal and we lose the next face off. Like, that's what this opportunity can be for us. It's just a really big one. It's just a really big event that affected our entire country and affected every athlete, and how we choose to respond. And so that's how the meeting started with the team. And then from there, I gave them what I thought would be the right response, which is they're all going to go back home. All these athletes are going to go back home. And a lot of people are going to tell them how sorry they are for them, that they lost their season, and give them a lot of opportunity to feel like the victim, as opposed to like empowering them into an opportunity. And that's mostly what we spoke about, was that, we can shift our mindset of turning this into an opportunity to really reveal what the York Lacrosse program is about.
Yeah.
And therefore, like, what good we could bring to each of our communities in terms of overcoming these things. So that was kind of the impetus of the meeting that we had, and then tried to, but again, it all happened so quick, they had to leave campus, and so it wasn't like I got to meet with each guy one-on-one.
Yeah.
And really be there for them individually. It was quite a kind of a collective, approach.
Yeah, I feel like it's definitely tough for, I'm sure, some of your players to respond to this, just based on like how not only abrupt everything was, but like everyone now is dispersed and like back in their own worlds, where like who knows how they're being influenced, and who knows what conversations they're having. So I think that's where it's like I think that's where it's really tricky for you. Like, how are you trying to find ways to like stay connected, I guess, with some of your guys and continue that conversation so the response is positive and the outcome becomes something that is positive as opposed to negative as well?
Yeah, I think it's something that and with what's going on right now, your ability to connect with your players is pretty dependent upon your ability to understand technology.
Yeah.
And so with that being said, between all the things that are going on, from them taking online classes to me and my family and our 4 kids, and
Yeah.
it feels like you have all this time, but there's all this opportunity to get pulled in all this different directions. So it's been really difficult, I think, to stay communicated. So, I mean, we have a group me where we can kind of chime in and share things with the team. So we do that pretty regularly. I find funny videos and stuff to throw in there. My kids have this, this is just a funny little side note, and it won't make any sense to anybody unless they've ever had to watch Go Noodle. But in my kids' school, there's something called Go Noodle, where they take these brain breaks, and there's these crazy videos that have millions and millions of views. So our kids, my first grader will be in math or whatever, and then when they transition to the next thing, they play these crazy videos. And so when we would do film this year, I would just stop, we'd be watching like the other team's offense, and I just stop and I put on these Go Noodle first grade brain breaks. And so occasionally I find a Go Noodle and I throw it in the team group me to send it out to the guys, just to get them to laugh a little bit. So we try to communicate that way. I've been calling my seniors, and having phone conversations with them, and just checking in on them and how things are going. But for the most part, it's group me's to the whole team, or emails if it's something that's a little bit more pertinent to email, and registering for classes and housing and some of these things that we used to be able to address in team meetings.
Sure.
Now you've got to rely on some sort of communication platform to get that information out to them.
Is there anything that you personally have gotten a chance to do with maybe your own family that never in a million years would you have gotten a chance to do this time of the year if everything was normal? That was not, that was a good thing, obviously, more positive than anything.
Yeah, I mean, this is like really kind of, if my wife knew I was going to say this, like she would cringe. But I have a 9-year-old daughter with special needs that needs toileting training. And this sounds crazy, but we've met with this toileting expert for kids with disabilities on like January the 15th, like right when lacrosse season was started. And she gave us this like pretty complicated plan on how to potty train a child with disabilities. And I came home from it and just said to my wife, like, well, we'll never have the time to do that. And here we are. And so, as weird as it sounds, because I'm going to answer your question honestly, that's what I try to do. We've been potty training our daughter, and it's worked. It's been like an absolute blessing.
That's awesome.
And yeah, so that would be my answer. But outside of that, just a lot of like schoolwork with my kids.
Yeah.
As a coach, like by the time I would get home from practice and things like that, homework is done, and sometimes dinner is done, and I'm there for about bedtime, and that's it.
Hmm.
But now with like online schooling and worksheets and stuff, like I'm there for it, and doing it with them, and that's been a lot of fun too. To do the schoolwork with my two of my boys.
That's cool. You said your wife's a teacher?
She's a phys ed teacher, yeah.
Okay, cool. Is it interesting to see your wife kind of in action? Because she's probably come to your games, seen you coach your players. Now you're at home. She's kind of like working with your own kids. Like she's guiding them through it. Is that kind of a unique dynamic?
Yeah, it's been neat. So for my wife, this is her first year back at work. When my daughter, who I was speaking about, was born,
Yeah.
she stopped working until she kind of got to the age where she was in school and had a personal care assistant with her. And so this was her first opportunity back. And so it's been really good for our family. It's been really cool um, to watch her in action, as you say. And she's so committed and thoughtful and planned out as an
Mhm.
educator that it makes me think that I need to be doing a little bit more planning for the York Lacrosse program. That's for sure.
It's good. You're learning from them too. She's
Yeah,
not just teaching
absolutely.
your kids, you too. That's awesome, man.
Yeah,
Well,
absolutely.
all right. Well, listen, Coach Childs, I appreciate your time, man, and sharing your insight on how you're kind of helping your team through it and keeping things moving in the right direction. We hope hopefully nothing like this ever happens again. But if it does, like you said, it's like, sometimes how you respond to it is everything. It's so important.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, thanks again for having me on. Love to do it anytime. Thanks a lot.